The wind howled like a living thing that night, clawing at the windows of Kingston, a small town swallowed by a brutal Midwest blizzard. Snow slashed sideways across the dark sky, turning the world into a swirling sea of white. Highways had vanished under ice. Trucks stranded like forgotten ghosts along the roadside. Inside Kingston's Stop Diner, Linda Kingston moved quickly, breath misting in the frigid air. The old boiler groaned, barely alive, yet she refused to close. "Keep the light on, kid." Her late father's voice echoed in memory. "Someone's always out there counting on you." Her father, Robert Kingston, Vietnam vet and founder of the diner, watched over her from a framed photo behind the counter. Beneath it read, "For those still serving, for those still driving, you're home here." Two truckers sat hunched over their coffee, shoulders wrapped in heavy coats. Linda refilled their mugs with shaking, frostbitten fingers. The flickering emergency bulbs cast long shadows across cracked vinyl booths, but the diner still felt alive, barely. Then at 7:15 p.m., the door burst open, sending a blast of icy wind through the room. Linda rushed forward and froze. 12 soldiers stood in the doorway, snow clinging to their uniforms like armor frost. Their faces were raw from the cold. The one in front, a gray-eyed sergeant with a streak of white hair at his temple, spoke first. "Ma'am, we're the 302nd. Our convoy stuck 5 miles up. Engines, radios, heaters, all dead. We saw your sign. Can we—" Linda didn't let him finish. She grabbed towels from the rack and tossed them toward him. "Get in here before you freeze solid. Kitchen's warmer. Strip off those wet layers." The soldiers hesitated. She raised an eyebrow. That was a suggestion. Her tone cut through their shock. Within minutes, they were crowding the kitchen, thawing beside the ovens as Linda ladled steaming chili into bowls. "Food's hot," she said. "Don't ask, just eat." The men obeyed. Silence filled the diner, broken only by spoons scraping bowls and the hum of the old generator. When one soldier glanced toward the wall, he noticed a framed photo. "That your dad?" he asked softly. Linda nodded. "Robert Kingston, 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines." The sergeant stood, stepping closer. "Da Nang?" "Yeah, he got sent home after the first tour," she replied. Never stopped talking about the guys he left behind. The sergeant's face changed, recognition flickering across his features. "Name's Jake Morrow. My uncle served with the 3rd. I grew up hearing those names." He pointed at a list taped beside the photo. Names of men her father vowed never to forget. For a moment, the storm outside didn't matter. Then Linda said quietly, "Generators dying. We've got maybe 3 hours of power left. After that, it's blankets and body heat." Jake nodded. "We've slept in worse." By 9 p.m., snow drifts stood 6 feet high against the walls. The town was buried alive. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Linda lit kerosene lamps, leading everyone into the warehouse behind the diner. "We'll make do," she said. "We always do." Inside, she laid wooden pallets across the floor, covered them with blankets and cardboard. Soldiers and truckers huddled together, teeth chattering. Linda moved like a medic, passing out soup, checking for frostbite, wrapping trembling hands. Jake organized a group like a field commander. He assigned buddies, calm panic privates, and told quiet stories of endurance, of jungle rains and homecoming parades, to keep their minds steady. At one point, a young private tried to pay Linda. She pushed his hand away. "No," she said softly. "You've already paid enough." Jake heard and nodded silently. Her tone reminded him of men who gave everything and asked nothing back. Outside, the blizzard screamed like an angry god. But inside Kingston's Stop, there was warmth, the fragile, miraculous kind born from shared survival. Beneath the glow of oil lamps, they waited for dawn. By midnight, word had spread. Through trucker radios, through static-filled CB channels, people whispered that Kingston Stop was still open. By 1 a.m., there were over 30 souls inside. Truckers, travelers, soldiers, even a stray Labrador that someone had rescued off the road. The warehouse looked like a makeshift refugee camp. Pallets lined up as beds, bodies pressed close under patched quilts. Linda worked nonstop, serving soup, pouring coffee, tending to anyone too pale or still. Her boots were soaked through, fingers cracked and raw, yet she never slowed. Jake Morrow had become her shadow, patching leaks, wrapping pipes, helping an old veteran fix his oxygen tank. He didn't give orders. He simply moved where he was needed. Around 3:30 a.m., they sat on overturned crates near the stove, wrapped in a rare moment of silence. "I was in Fallujah," Jake said quietly. "Lost my best friend 5 feet away." Linda didn't answer immediately. The hiss of the pilot light filled the silence. "My dad said something like that," she replied. "One day he stopped hearing the gunfire because the screaming was louder." Jake's voice softened. "What was he like?" She smiled faintly. "A ghost long before he died. He built this place to make peace with what he saw. Said he wanted to create something no one could destroy. A safe place for truckers, vets, anyone out in the cold." Jake looked around at the warehouse, at soldiers and strangers sleeping shoulder to shoulder. "Looks like he succeeded." Her eyes glistened. "Sometimes I wonder." He met her gaze. "You kept this open when everyone else shut down. That's not duty, that's legacy." For a while, neither spoke. They simply listened to the snow and the steady rhythm of human breathing. Then, a loud crack shattered the stillness. A pipe burst above the bathroom, spraying icy water across the floor. Chaos rippled through the room, shouts, panic, movement. Linda and Jake sprang into action, cutting off the valve, mopping freezing water with towels. Fear spread like wildfire. Someone murmured that the power grid was down across the county. Others spoke of ambulances trapped in snowdrifts. A teenage driver began sobbing in the corner. Linda climbed onto a crate, voice strong but calm. "Listen up. We have heat, we have food, and we have each other. That means we'll make it through. No one is alone here." Her steady voice cut through the fear. Slowly, quiet returned. Later, she found a note on the back of a paper menu. "Thanks for keeping the fire lit. R.K., her father's initials." She folded it carefully into her apron pocket, heart aching, but warm. By dawn, her strength was fading. She leaned against the counter, eyelids heavy. Jake approached. "You need rest." "I can't." "Yes, you can. 10 minutes. I'll hold down the fort." She wanted to argue, but saw the quiet authority in his eyes. 10 minutes, she whispered. He helped her lie down on a cot in the office. As she drifted into sleep, Jake stood at the window, watching the snow ease just enough for the first faint glow of morning to appear. Outside, help might be coming. Or not. But inside Kingston's stop, there was warmth, courage, and something close to hope. When Linda woke, light was seeping through the frosted window. Morning had come, but not peace. The storm still raged outside, howling across buried cars and fallen poles. Power lines hung like black vines under the weight of ice. Yet inside Kingston's stop, life clung stubbornly on. The old boiler hissed, the smell of coffee mixed with diesel and smoke, and people were still breathing. Jake Morrow stood near the door, a rifle slung across his shoulder, talking softly into a dead radio. He turned when he saw her stir. "Morning, boss," he said, smiling faintly. "Morning," she croaked, rubbing her eyes. "Any news?" He shook his head. No signal yet, but skies might clear by noon. If the National Guard's close, they'll find us. Linda nodded, tying her hair back with a rag. Good, because breakfast isn't going to cook itself. She limped toward the kitchen, boots squelching in melted snow, and started cracking eggs over the last of the propane flame. The soldiers gathered, one by one, quietly helping. Someone made toast over a camp stove. Another scraped frost from the windows. The diner smelled of burnt bread, wet wool, and resilience. A little girl who had been traveling with her mother came forward, tugging Linda's sleeve. "Miss, my mama says thank you for the soup." Linda knelt, brushing snow from the girl's curls. "You tell your mama she doesn't owe me a thing." Jake watched, a ghost of a smile tugging at his mouth. "You really don't quit, do you?" "Not while there's coffee left," she replied, handing him a cup. By late morning, the storm began to fade. The wind dropped to a whisper, and gray light filtered through torn clouds. Jake and 2 soldiers went outside to check the road. What they found made Jake's stomach drop. Half a mile of trucks buried in snow, engines entombed in white like frozen beasts. He could barely tell where the road had been. When he came back in, his expression said everything. "We're still trapped?" Linda asked. "Yeah, but the sky's clearing. We might get a chopper in a few hours." Linda nodded slowly. "Then we hold the line until then." She rallied the room, assigning tasks with the command of someone born to lead. "You, check on the older folks. You, help the kids find dry socks. You, get the coffee going again." Jake stood beside her, watching as people move with new purpose. "You've done this before," he said. Linda gave a tired laugh. "Only every winter for the last 15 years. But never like this. Your dad would have been proud," Jake said. She froze, glancing at her father's photo on the wall. For the first time since he passed, the sight didn't hurt. It steadied her. "I hope so," she whispered. By noon, faint thumping echoed through the storm, the unmistakable rhythm of helicopter blades. Cheers erupted. People rushed to the windows as a National Guard chopper descended onto the road, soldiers waving through swirling snow. Jake grinned. "Told you they'd come." The doors burst open, and a young guard officer stepped in, brushing snow from his uniform. "We picked up your heat signal," he said. "Didn't expect to find half the county in one diner." Linda smiled wearily. "Welcome to Kingston Stop." The officer took in the scene: soldiers, truckers, children wrapped in blankets, steam rising from pots of chili, and shook his head in awe. "You kept them all alive?" She shrugged. "Didn't have much choice." "Ma'am," he said sincerely, "you saved lives. The colonel's going to want to hear about this." Jake chuckled. "Told you she's tougher than most commanders I've known." Linda rolled her eyes, but her cheeks flushed pink. Hours later, after the last evacuees were airlifted out, only Linda and Jake remained to lock up. The diner was silent, except for the ticking of the cooling stoves. She leaned against the counter, exhaustion finally catching up. "Guess that's that," she murmured. Jake shook his head. "Not even close. You think the Army is going to forget the woman who ran a relief base in a blizzard?" She gave a small smile. "I didn't do it for credit." "I know. That's why you deserve it." He extended a folded piece of paper. "Guards setting up a permanent emergency hub in town. They want your diner as the anchor site." Her brow furrowed. "You're kidding." "Nope. Kingston Stop Emergency Station. You'll get funding, backup power, everything." Her throat tightened. "He would have liked that," she whispered, looking at her father's photo. Jake smiled. He'd have said, "You kept the light on, kid." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them away. "Guess I did." In the following weeks, news spread like wildfire. Headlines read, "Small town diner becomes lifeline during historic blizzard." Local woman saves dozens when roads shut down. Reporters came and went, snapping photos of the diner's cracked sign and the list of rescue names Linda taped beside her father's portrait. Truckers brought flowers. Veterans mail medals they said she'd earned more than they ever did. And sometimes, when the sun hit the old photo just right, she swore she could hear her father's voice again. Warm, proud, steady. "Keep the light on." She did. Months later, Jake returned, not in uniform this time. He walked in with a duffel bag, the bell above the door jingling softly. Linda was wiping the counter. She froze when she saw him. "Back from duty?" she asked. "Back for good," he replied. "Took the teaching post at the academy. Figured it was time to stop running toward every storm." Her lips curved. "You picked a good place to land." He glanced at the window, where snow fell lightly again. "Still open 24 hours?" "Always." He reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the counter, a weathered military patch. "For your wall," he said. "From the 302nd. We wanted to thank you." Linda's hand trembled slightly as she pinned it beneath her father's photo. "You didn't have to." Jake smiled softly. "Neither did you, but you did anyway." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the heater and the quiet murmur of travelers in the booths. Coffee? She asked finally. He nodded. Always. She poured him a mug, steam rising between them like a promise. That winter, Kingston Stop became more than a diner. Truckers called it the Lighthouse, a place where no one was turned away, where the coffee was always hot and the door always open. And each year, when snow blanketed the highway, the glow of its sign cut through the storm like a beacon. Kingston Stop, open. Inside, the same photo hung above the counter. Robert Kingston, smiling faintly beside a handwritten note taped beneath it. Keep the light on. Someone's always out there. Beneath that, a newer message in fresh ink. And someone's always home. Linda and Jake. From that day forward, Kingston Stop wasn't just a diner. It was a symbol of what one person's kindness could do against the cold. When storms came, people remembered that night. They told stories of a woman who refused to close her doors, a soldier who stood by her side, and a place that reminded everyone that warmth wasn't just heat. It was humanity. And every winter, when the wind howled like a living thing across the frozen plains, truckers looked for that one small glow on the horizon and whispered, "Keep the light on, Linda. We're still out here."